On the night of the winter solstice gala, my father-in-law stood before hundreds of the city's most elite figures and publicly humiliated me. But when I finally defended myself, my husband struck me across the face so hard, I shattered a display of antique glass. The entire room laughed. I wiped the blood from my chin, walked out into the freezing snow, and made one single phone call. "Father, it is time to intervene. My name is Clara, and I am 32 years old. For the past 8 years, I have lived a quiet life working as a horologist and master vault restorer. It is a highly specialized profession that requires infinite patience. Working with gears, intricate timepieces, and historical locking mechanisms, I prefer the quiet hum of my workshop and the satisfaction of fixing broken things. My husband, Julien, is a man who thrives on noise and spectacle. He is 36, a senior director at his father's aggressive hedge fund, and a man who measures his worth by the label on his suit and the price of his sports cars. Tonight was the most important event of his life. We were attending the annual winter gala for his father's firm, hosted at the city's grandest historical library. The vaulted ceilings of the library were dripping with crystal blank 3-cell, and waiters in velvet jackets carried silver trays of imported caviar. 500 politicians, socialites, and industry titans mingled among the priceless books. I stood quietly near a marble pillar, wearing a modest emerald gown. I had tailored myself. Drinking sparkling water, I felt entirely out of place, especially when I looked at my in-laws. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, held court by the grand fireplace, dripping in rubies that cost more than a suburban home. Beside her was my sister-in-law, Vivienne, draped in a couture gown, clinging to her husband, Marcus. Marcus is a ruthless corporate fixer, the lead legal counsel for my father-in-law's firm. He stood there swirling a glass of cognac, his eyes darting around the room, always calculating his next predatory move. In this family, I was considered a stain on their perfect aesthetic. My father-in-law, Arthur, stepped up to the main podium. The orchestra ceased playing, and the massive hall fell dead silent. Arthur tapped the microphone. Asmuk, aristocratic smile spreading across his face. He thanked the crowd for their investments, boasting about their unmatched wealth and the superiority of their family bloodline. He spoke of legacy and discipline, claiming their success was an inherited trait that separated the elite from the peasants. I stared at the marble floor, hoping he would simply raise a glass and step down. Instead, Arthur turned his piercing gaze directly toward me. The smile on his face turned malicious. Maintaining a legacy requires charity. Arthur projected into the microphone, his voice echoing off the ancient walls. We must give back to those who have nothing. My son Julien is a true philanthropist. Years ago, he could have married any heiress in this room, but he chose to elevate a woman who spends her days covered in grease, playing with rusty clocks and dusty gears. He brought her out of the dirt, gave her a prominent name, and tried to polish a piece of coal. Let us toast to my son's extraordinary patience and endless charity. The words were laced with absolute venom. I stood frozen, my cheeks burning with a humiliation so deep it made my vision blur. I looked around the grand library, hoping someone would recognize the cruelty of his speech. Instead, the elite crowd erupted in synchronized laughter. 500 people were mocking my existence. I looked at Eleanor, who was hiding her laughter behind a crystal champagne flute. Vivienne openly pointed at me, while Marcus simply smirked into his cognac, entirely devoid of human empathy. I turned to Julien, the man who had vowed to protect me. I waited for him to take the microphone, to defend his wife, to prove that our marriage meant more than his father's toxic approval. Julian did not look angry. He looked at his father, raised his glass, and laughed along with the crowd. In that sickening moment, the illusion of my marriage completely shattered. I realized I was entirely alone. I did not run away, and I refused to cry. The betrayal in Julian's eyes flipped a switch deep inside my chest. The warmth I had held for him evaporated, replaced by cold, calculated clarity. I stepped away from the marble pillar and walked with deliberate, heavy steps toward the podium. The guests parted, expecting me to flee in tears. Eleanor rolled her eyes, whispering to Vivienne. I reached the podium and gripped the cold metal of the microphone. I tapped it once, a sharp sound that cut through the elitist laughter like a blade. 500 faces turned toward me in shock. Arthur frowned. Stepping back, Julian lowered his glass, his brow furrowing in irritation. I took a deep breath, my voice ringing out clear and unwavering. Thank you, Arthur, for highlighting my profession, I said, keeping my tone deadly calm. It is true. I spend my days studying complex mechanisms, finding the broken gears, and preventing catastrophic failures. I paused, letting the silence stretch. I looked directly into Arthur's eyes. Speaking of catastrophic failures, I think it is only fair to discuss the true extent of my charity toward this family. You see, my little clockmaking business was quite profitable this quarter. Profitable enough that I was able to quietly liquidate a series of my engineering patents to wire $300,000 directly into Julian's shadow accounts. A collective gasp echoed through the grand library. I raised my voice, ensuring the industry titans heard every word. Yes, $300,000 of my hard-earned money was transferred just 48 hours ago to cover a massive margin call. It seems this superior bloodline was days away from defaulting on a highly leveraged offshore position. So you are correct, Arthur. I do fix broken things. I just saved your entire legacy from total bankruptcy. The silence that followed was absolute and suffocating. Investors began to whisper frantically. Wealthy clients who trusted Arthur with their fortunes suddenly looked at him with profound suspicion. Arthur stood paralyzed at the podium, his arrogant face turning a sickly shade of gray. Eleanor dropped her champagne flute, the crystal shattering against the stone floor. Vivienne covered her mouth in horror. Marcus, however, did not panic. The brilliant, ruthless lawyer narrowed his eyes at me, his mind racing. He realized instantly that the quiet wife possessed intimate knowledge of their darkest financial secrets. I was no longer an embarrassment. I was a lethal threat. I turned my gaze to Julian. His carefully crafted image of dominance was completely destroyed. For a man obsessed with upper-class validation, being exposed as a financial failure saved by his working-class wife was the ultimate destruction of his ego. His peers were looking at him with disgust. His face turned dark red, the veins in his neck bulging against his silk collar. He let out a primal scream of absolute rage. "Shut your mouth!" Julian roared. Charging across the room, the wealthy guests scrambled out of his way. I stood my ground, refusing to flinch. He closed the distance in seconds. He lunged forward, swinging his right arm with terrifying force. His open palm struck the side of my face with a sickening crack. The impact lifted me off my feet. I spun backward, crashing into a priceless display of antique hourglasses. The glass shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces, raining down around me as I collapsed onto the hard stone floor. The sharp shards tore through my emerald gown. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth, I lay in the wreckage for a moment, staring at the vaulted ceiling. 500 people watched me bleed, and not a single one stepped forward to help. I pushed myself up onto my hands and knees, ignoring the glass slicing into my palms. My ears were ringing, but my vision was crystal clear. I looked at Vivienne, who was genuinely smiling at my physical pain. Marcus took a slow sip of his cognac, watching me with cold detachment, already formulating the legal defense. I forced myself to stand. I wiped the blood from my chin with the back of my hand. I looked Julian dead in the eye. He was breathing heavily, his fists clenched, trying to look powerful but failing to hide his sheer panic. I turned and walked away, my head held high, forcing the elite crowd to part from me. I walked out of the grand library, leaving a trail of shattered glass behind me. I pushed through the heavy wooden doors into the grand restroom. I gripped the edge of the marble sink and stared at my reflection. A dark purple bruise was blooming across my cheek, and my lip was torn. For 8 years, I had played the role of the unassuming wife, hiding my true identity to see if I could be loved for my character rather than the terrifying empire my family controlled. Tonight, Julian proved my experiment was a failure. He loved the control, not me. I reached into the hidden pocket of my gown and pulled out my cracked phone. I scrolled past the preservation societies and local contractors. I stopped at a number I had not called in 8 years. The number belonged to a man whose very existence commanded fear across global financial markets. Calling this number meant unleashing a force that would obliterate Julian's fragile world. I pressed call. The line rang once. A deep, commanding voice answered immediately. Clara. I closed my eyes, the years of distance vanishing. Father, I said softly, it is time to intervene. Please come. The line went dead. My father, Sterling, was the architect of a sovereign wealth syndicate. He did not ask questions, he executed. I splashed cold water on my face, dried the blood, and walked out the service exit into the freezing winter night. I hailed a taxi and gave the driver the address of the historical brownstone I shared with Julian. I had spent 2 years rewiring and restoring the property myself. The taxi left me on the snowy curb. I walked up the stone steps and placed my thumb on the biometric scanner. A harsh red light blinked. Access denied. I tried the keypad. Denied. Marcus had moved with terrifying speed, dispatching a security team to overwrite the system the moment Julian struck me. They wanted to lock me out in the freezing snow, separating me from my passport and my financial drives, but they forgot that I was the one who built the security grid. I walked down the dark alley beside the house. Hidden behind a creeping ivy vine was an analog mechanical override I had installed in the vintage iron gate. I pressed the sequence of iron leaves, releasing the heavy latch. I slipped into the courtyard and used a concealed skeleton key to enter through the basement workshop. I moved silently through the dark house, marching up the grand staircase to the master bedroom. I pushed open the double doors. The room was brightly lit, and lining the wall were 5 black trash bags filled with my clothes. Julian had not packed. He had thrown my life away like garbage. I walked to the walk-in closet, retrieving a heavy wool sweater and dark trousers to replace my ruined gown. As I changed, I noticed a piece of black lace lingerie resting on Julian's pillow. It was not mine. The ultimate betrayal locked into place. He was not just stealing from me, he was bringing another woman into the home I restored. I walked to my hidden floor safe, inputted the mechanical combination, and retrieved my encrypted hard drive and passport. I stuffed them into a leather bag. Just as I turned to leave, the heavy front door downstairs clicked open. Footsteps echoed in the foyer. Julian was laughing. A cruel, arrogant sound. Marcus was with him, his deep voice outlining the legal strategy to freeze my accounts by morning. They walked into the master bedroom. Julian stopped laughing when he saw me standing calmly in the center of the room, dressed in dark winter clothes, the purple bruise stark against my pale skin. "You always were like a cockroach," Julian sneered. Stepping aside, Marcus walked in, radiating absolute corporate dominance. He carried a thick, leather-bound legal folio and dropped it onto the bed next to the foreign lingerie. "We are making this simple, Clara," Marcus said, his voice cold and calculated. "You threatened the stability of the fund. This document is a retroactive postnuptial agreement." I asked him how he planned to enforce a retroactive document. Marcus smiled a predatory smile. "You made an error when you trusted Julian with your patent royalties," he explained. "For the past year, I have routed every dollar you earned into a series of shell corporations. We executed internal loans that defaulted on paper, transferring your entire life savings into an irrevocable trust in Switzerland. The beneficiary of that trust is my wife, Vivienne. You have zero legal claim to your own money. You are completely bankrupt." Julian laughed, tossing the black lingerie onto the floor. "You thought your little 300,000 gave you leverage," he mocked. "We took your money because you were too stupid to see it. Now you have no savings, no family, and nowhere to sleep." Marcus pulled out a silver fountain pen and held it toward me. "Sign the agreement," Marcus demanded. "It waives all spousal support and includes a permanent gag order. If you sign, Julian will give you a $4,000 relocation fee. If you refuse, I will bury you in so much litigation, you will die in debt. Take the money and walk out into the snow." I did not take the pen. I picked up the thick legal folio. I read the clauses designed to destroy my life, my career, and my sanity. They expected me to weep. Instead, I gripped the thick paper, braced my wrists, and tore the entire document perfectly in half. I dropped the shredded pieces onto Marcus's expensive leather shoes. I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. Julian's face twisted with rage. "You are delusional," he screamed. "You have nothing. Your cards will decline. You will freeze on the street tonight." Marcus crossed his arms. "You made a fatal miscalculation, Clara. I will file the digital copies at dawn." Julian grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin, and shoved me down the hallway. He pushed me down the grand staircase and dragged me to the front door. He yanked it open. A massive blizzard was tearing through the city, the wind howling and snow drifting across the marble steps. Julian shoved me hard out the door. "Welcome to reality," he spat. "Have a nice life in the gutter." He slammed the heavy door, the deadbolt echoing like a gunshot. I stood on the freezing, snow-covered curb, the wind biting through my wool sweater. The wealthy street was dead silent. I stared into the darkness, refusing to shiver. Suddenly, the blinding glare of LED headlights pierced the blizzard. It was not one car, but a synchronized fleet of 4 armored black Maybachs. The massive vehicles glided silently through the deep snow, pulling to a halt directly in front of me. The engines hummed with terrifying power. On the porch behind me, the front door swung open. Julian and Marcus stepped out, drawn by the blinding lights. They expected to see me freezing. Instead, they saw a display of wealth that dwarfed their entire existence. Julian scoffed, assuming it was a lost motorcade. The door of the lead Maybach opened. A man in a tailored black suit stepped out, holding a massive umbrella to block the driving snow. He reached into the dark cabin. My father stepped out. Sterling moved with the gravity of a man who owned governments. He wore a bespoke midnight blue overcoat, his silver hair immaculate despite the storm. He did not look at the house or the men on the porch. He walked straight into the freezing snow, stopping right in front of me. His sharp eyes scanned my shivering frame and locked onto the dark bruise on my cheek. The temperature seemed to drop even further. Assilon. Terrifying fury radiated from him. He unbuttoned his heavy vicuna overcoat and draped it over my shoulders, the warmth instantly shielding me from the blizzard. "Get in, Clara," my father said, his voice a low rumble of absolute finality. "Their existence ends tonight." On the porch, Julian laughed nervously. "Who is this?" Clara Julian yelled over the wind. "A premium taxi service. You need more than a fancy ride to save you from my lawyer." Sterling slowly turned his head. He looked at Julian with the cold, hollow disgust usually reserved for an insect. The sheer, crushing weight of that stare made Julian physically stumble backward. Marcus stiffened, his analytical mind recognizing true, boundless power. My father guided me into the warm luxurious cabin of the Maybach. The door slammed shut, cutting off the storm. The convoy accelerated smoothly, leaving Julian and Marcus shrinking into the snowy darkness. Back on the porch, Julian shook his head. "She is pathetic," he muttered. "Let's go drink." Marcus did not answer. His secure encrypted phone was vibrating frantically. It was the highest level emergency alert from their banking grid. Marcus looked at the screen, the blood completely draining from his face. "A massive liquidity freeze has just been placed on our entire corporate structure," Marcus whispered, raw terror choking his voice. "We have been completely severed from the global banking system." The Maybach insulated us from the chaos I knew was unfolding behind us. We drove into the heart of the financial district, descending into a fortified underground bunker beneath the Vanguard Sterling skyscraper. A private elevator took us 70 floors up to my father's penthouse, a masterpiece of glass and black marble overlooking the snow-covered city. A medical team was waiting. A concierge doctor examined my jaw, applying a specialized dermal cooling agent to the bruise before silently exiting. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, wearing dry, tailored silk trousers and a cashmere turtleneck provided by the staff. Sterling handed me a glass of rare bourbon. 8 years. "Clara," he said softly, "you played house with thieves because you wanted to build something outside my shadow. Did you find your genuine love?" I looked at the dark liquid in my glass. "No," I admitted. "They wanted a pawn, and when I spoke up, they stole my life's work and locked me in the snow." Sterling placed his glass on the marble desk. "You are a Sterling," he commanded. "We do not tolerate parasites. You survived their little game. But now it is time to conquer." He handed me a sleek titanium tablet. The screen displayed a proprietary intelligence feed tracking Arthur's hedge fund. The numbers were bleeding red. Marcus and Julian had been shuffling stolen money to hide a catastrophic collapse in their commercial real estate portfolio. They were hopelessly over-leveraged. "We can destroy them by dawn," Sterling said. "One call to the federal marshals, and they are in handcuffs." I shook my head. My eyes locked on the data. "No, if we arrest them now, they play the victim. I want them to build their own gallows." Sterling smiled a terrifying ludage. Proud smile. He handed me a heavy gold fountain pen and a leather-bound contract. "Then take your seat. The position of Chief Executive Officer of Vanguard Sterling Holdings is yours. Sign it. Clara." I took the gold pen and signed my true legal name. Clara Sterling. Taking control of a global financial empire, I pulled up the intercepted communications on the tablet. Because they are bleeding cash. Arthur and Julian are desperately seeking a massive private equity bailout. I explained to my father, they need $200 million by tomorrow. or their creditors will seize everything. They have submitted a blind application to the largest syndicate in the city. I turned the tablet around. They are begging Vanguard Sterling for a lifeline. They have no idea that the woman they just threw into a blizzard is the CEO of the syndicate they are praying to. The next morning, while I sat in the command center of Vanguard Sterling, my former mother-in-law and sister-in-law were celebrating their perceived victory, ignorant to the fact that their accounts were frozen. Eleanor and Vivienne attended a private viewing at the city's most exclusive fine art gallery. They were drinking champagne, loudly boasting about Julian's impending massive deal, and spreading vicious rumors that I had run off with a sugar daddy after embezzling from their family, feeling invincible. Vivienne decided to purchase a pair of original Impressionist paintings and a diamond-encrusted sculpture, totaling over $400,000. She handed the gallery director her heavy metal corporate card with extreme arrogance. The director ran the card. The terminal screamed a harsh red decline. Vivienne rolled her eyes, blaming a fraud hold, and demanded Eleanor use her executive black card. The director ran it. Declined. The gallery fell silent. The wealthy patrons turned to watch. The director stepped back, his voice projecting across the room. I am sorry, ladies, but every account tied to your names has been frozen by an international banking authority. You have zero funds. Eleanor turned ghost white, snatching the cards back in profound enrez. Public humiliation. Vivienne rushed to the lobby, frantically dialing Marcus. Marcus. Fix the bank right now, she screamed into the phone. Both of our cards just declined in front of the entire gallery. Marcus did not answer her. He stood frozen in the grand lobby of his prestigious law firm. He dropped his phone, the screen shattering on the marble floor. The lobby was not filled with lawyers. It was swarming with federal cybercrime agents and U.S. Marshals. The lead agent flashed a federal warrant in Marcus's face. We have received an encrypted, undeniable dossier proving massive wire fraud, offshore embezzlement, and the commingling of client funds. The agent announced loudly, "You are to step away from your servers immediately. You are under federal investigation." Marcus felt his knees buckle. The hidden Swiss accounts, the money stolen from my patents, it was all exposed. He realized he was not just losing his license. He was facing decades in federal prison. He desperately needed to warn Julian that the bailout was a lethal trap, but his phone was smashed, and an agent was already placing him in handcuffs. At that exact moment, Julian and Arthur were stepping out of a private elevator on the 80th floor of the Vanguard Sterling Tower. They were escorted into a massive glass skybridge boardroom suspended over the city. The room was intimidating, featuring a massive table carved from a single block of black obsidian. There were no chairs for them, only two small stools. Arthur paced the room, rubbing his hands together. 200 million. Julian, Arthur boasted, once we sign this, no one will ever question our bloodline again. Julian nervously checked his watch, unable to reach Marcus, but pushed the anxiety down. The heavy doors at the back of the skybridge swung open. A team of 6 elite corporate litigators marched in, carrying thick files sealed with federal tape. They stood at attention. Then, the CEO entered. Julian stopped breathing. The pen slipped from his hand, clattering against the obsidian. The woman walking toward the head of the table was dressed in a bespoke charcoal power suit, radiating absolute, terrifying authority. The purple bruise on my cheek was visible, but my eyes were entirely devoid of mercy. Arthur let out a loud, nervous laugh. "What is this?" Arthur demanded, his voice shaking. "Did they hire my pathetic daughter-in-law to serve the water? Get out before you ruin the most important deal of our lives?" I did not blink. I walked to the head of the table and sat in the massive leather executive chair. The 6 litigators remained standing behind me. An impenetrable wall of legal power. I placed my hands on the black obsidian. "Let us review your liquidity," I commanded, my voice echoing like ice against the glass. "You claim $50 million in unencumbered capital. However, my forensic syndicate tracked your transactions. You executed an illegal commingling maneuver, draining your clients' escrow accounts and stealing the royalties from my engineering patents." Arthur grabbed his chest, his face turning gray as the reality of federal crimes washed over him. I opened the file. "You routed stolen money into a Swiss trust to fraudulently secure this exact bailout. You thought you were untouchable." Julian began to hyperventilate. His mind shattered as he realized the woman he had abused was the apex predator of the financial world. "You are delusional," Julian screamed, slamming his hands on the table in blind panic. "You are a clockmaker. Get out of this room," I leaned forward. Reaching into my suit pocket, I slid a heavy titanium business card across the obsidian. It stopped inches from Julian's shaking fingers. He looked down. The engraved letters read, "Clara Sterling, Chief Executive Officer." Julian collapsed onto his stool, the color completely draining from his face. The sheer terror of his mistake broke his fragile ego. Arthur whimpered, burying his face in his hands as his entire legacy evaporated. "You thought you could steal my life's work," I said softly, staring into Julian's panicked eyes. "You slapped me, locked me in the snow, and called me garbage. But my money wasn't enough to save your sinking ship. So you stole from innocent people. You wanted to sit at the table of true global power. Welcome to Vanguard Sterling. Your application for a bailout is permanently denied. Your firm will default by noon. And your legacy is dead." Before Julian could beg, the boardroom doors crashed open. Marcus was dragged into the room by 2 federal marshals, his expensive suit torn, his wrists bound in steel handcuffs. The marshals forced him into a chair. Marcus looked at me sitting at the head of the table, and the last ounce of his arrogant defiance died. He bowed his head, crying silently. Julian slipped off his stool, falling to his knees on the hard floor. He crawled toward me, tears streaming down his face, begging for mercy, promising to change, blaming his father and his lawyer. I stood up, smoothing my suit. I looked down at the pathetic, weeping man. "I am not going to strike you, Julian," I said coldly. "Striking a defenseless coward is beneath me. Instead, I am taking your identity." I tossed a revised divorce decree onto the floor in front of him. "I have stripped you of the properties and the cars. You are absorbing 100% of the toxic debt from your fraudulent loans. You are leaving this marriage with nothing but federal indictments." My father's security team entered the room, hauling the weeping men off the floor and dragging them out of the building. The glass skybridge fell perfectly silent. 6 months later, the spring air was warm and vibrant. I stood on the steps of a massive state-of-the-art mechanical engineering institute I had fully funded and built for underprivileged women. I wore a brilliant sapphire suit, the bruise on my face long faded. The press and city officials cheered as I cut the ceremonial ribbon. Marcus was currently in federal prison. Eleanor and Vivienne were living in a cramped studio apartment, working as retail cashiers. Julian, entirely bankrupted and exiled from society, was last seen washing dishes in a suburban diner, his false superiority completely destroyed. I felt my phone buzz. A text from my father read, "The mechanism is perfect." I smiled. Looking out at the crowd, I was no longer shrinking myself to comfort a fragile man. I was Clara Sterling, the master architect of my own flawless empire. Never diminish your own light to fit into a space that was never meant to hold your brilliance. When we hide our true potential to appease the fragile egos of others, we invite exploitation. Clara's journey proves that true power does not lie in chaotic revenge, but in reclaiming the identity you were forced to bury. When the mask of submission is removed, those who preyed on your kindness will finally face the devastating reality of your absolute strength. Walk away from any table that demands you shrink, and build your own empire.